detail in lecture on Tuesday, but there are a couple of structural differences between arteries, veins, and capillaries. So first of all, for arteries and veins, you've got three layers or tunics. So you have the outermost, which is called the tunica externa, which is largely connective tissue, gives the artery and the vein structure. We then have a tunica media, which is going to be the smooth muscle, which causes the vasoconstriction and the vasodilation. And then you got the innermost layer called the tunica intima. We talked about here with the heart tissue, right? So it's going to have a lot of cholesterol in it to keep it smooth and all of that. So some of the structural differences between arteries and veins are, number one, the tunica media of arteries is significantly thicker, right? So the muscular wall is significantly thicker because arteries under significantly higher pressure and do a lot more change in pressure. Again, that's how we, right? So if we want to shunt blood from our arms to our torso, right, we do that by vasoconstricting to the arms and vasodilating to the torso. Okay? The main structural difference between arteries and veins is right here. So veins have got one-way valves, right? So veins are primarily going against gravity, okay? So veins primarily rely on what are called muscular pumps, okay? So if I've got a vein here, I got this one-way valve, right? So the one-way valve allows blood to go this way but not go back against gravity. So it relies on muscular pumps. So as you contract your muscles, this squeezes the blood up and through the valves, okay? So what happens, who here has worked a job where you have to stand in one place for long periods of time or sit for long periods of time? What starts happening to your feet after a couple of hours of just standing there?
Hurting.
Right, they start to hurt, right? Your feet start to swell, right? Because you're not moving around, so you start to get poor circulation, okay? So these one-way valves do that. Now, as we get older, some of these one-way valves don't work quite as well, and we start to end up with backflow. This is what causes varicose veins. So this is very, very common in older people, and a lot of times people get them, okay? So main structural difference between arteries and veins is those one-way valves. Capillaries only have the tunica intima, so they are one cell layer thick. Why are capillaries only one cell layer thick? Diffusion, right? So if you've got multiple layers, it'd make it really difficult for the oxygen and nutrients to diffuse out, and then the CO2 and the waste products to diffuse in. All right, so I'm going to talk about a couple of blood vessels today, and that's what's going to be on the quiz for Tuesday. So first and foremost, we talked about the first blood vessel coming off the heart is the aorta, okay? There are three blood vessels that come off the aorta. The first one is the right brachiocephalic. The second is the right common carotid. And the third, or the left common carotid, and then the third is the left subclavian. So if you look over here, so the right brachiocephalic immediately branches off into the right subclavian and the right common carotid. So subclavian means under the clavicle, okay? And then you got the left and right common carotid. If you see the term common, that means there's also a internal and an external, okay? So the left and right common carotid then branch off into the right and left internal and external carotid. The external carotid is the main artery that supplies blood to the face and the skull, and the internal carotid is the one that provides blood to the internal, stuff of the head, namely the brain, okay? We then have the left and right subclavian, okay? The left and right subclavian immediately transition into the left and right axillary. This region of your body is called the axilla, which is different from auxiliary. So don't put auxiliary on a test. Auxiliary and axillary, what's auxiliary, guys?
It's like the aux cord.
Like the what?
Like the aux cord, like in a car? No? Okay.
What's auxiliary? So like standby, right? So like auxiliary troops, auxiliary ammo, auxiliary stuff, right? So backup stuff, okay? Like an auxiliary generator, like a backup generator, okay? So from the axillary, you then go into the brachial and the cephalic, okay? So the cephalic supplies blood kind of here area. So then from the brachial, we then go into the, anybody know what this is called? Cubital, right? So specifically the antecubital, okay? So the blood vessels here are called the cubital blood. Anybody know why it's called this is known as the cubital region? So if I need an ark built, I know a guy. Somebody got that joke, right? Who built the ark? Noah, right? So God came to Noah and said, build me an ark, so many cubits by so many cubits by so many cubits. How long is a cubit, guys? From here to here, right? So basically from the tip of your elbow to the tip of your finger, that's a cubit, right? So we call this the cubital region. So when we draw blood, we're typically drawing blood from the antecubital vein, and then you also have the antecubital artery. Okay, then you have the radial artery, ulnar artery, palmar, and the digital arteries. Okay, so that's what's going on in the hand. In the torso, okay, we've got the so this is the abdominal aorta. So the abdominal aorta is going to give rise to several different blood vessels, including right here we'll see the renal, right? So the renal artery, there's the gastric artery, and the hepatic artery, the splenic, the celiac, right? For all of the various different organs. The abdominal aorta is going to branch off into the common iliac. Okay, the common iliac is going to branch off into the internal and the external iliac. The internal iliac is going to supply blood to a lot of the structures in there. The external iliac is going to be like the skin and like for men, the external genitalia, and also like the vulva and the clitoris for women. That is then going to branch off into the femoral. The femoral will then branch off into the popliteal. That's your knee region. The popliteal will then branch off into the fibular and tibular, and then the pedal, right, or pedalis. Okay, right. So when you need to push the gas or the brake, you're stepping on the pedal, right? Because that's where your feet are. Okay. So as the blood returns back to the body, back to the heart, you're going to go up through the fibular and tibular, through the popliteal and the femoral into what's called the great saphenous vein. So that's the major vein of the lower body. The great saphenous vein is going to go into the iliac. The iliac will then go into the IVC, the inferior vena cava. From the arms, it's going to go through the palmar to the radial and ulnar, through the antecubital to the cephalic. So that's the bicep vein that people, you know, that's the one Napoleon Dynamite's brother was trying to get, if you guys remember Napoleon Dynamite's brother. Okay. So cephalic into the axillary, into the subclavian, into the brachiocephalic, and then from the brachiocephalic into the superior vena cava. And then coming from the head, it's going to go through the internal and external jugular. So the internal jugular is going to drain the brain. External jugular is going to drain the face. That's going to go into the common jugular, left and right common jugular, and then into the SVC. So these are the major blood vessels of the body. So for the quiz next week, I want you to know aorta, these three, and then any of these combination of ones that I just kind of went over there. So any of those will be on the quiz for next Tuesday.